Majesty, the Great Admiral Zhong He undertook voyages of discovery with a fleet of 300 ships and 28,000 crew, which traveled to the eastern part of the African continent. And they saw the great African trading cities of Sofala and Mogadishu and Mombasa, Africans trading with the world. The age of colonialism saw the first European settlements in South Africa as a refreshment station for the ships en route to India and the Spice Islands of Indonesia. Our histories converged as large land masses were colonized. Indian enslaved people were brought from the Malabar coast to South Africa in the 1600s and 1700s. And later in the mid-1800s, large numbers of Indian indentured laborers were brought to develop South Africa's our sugar industry, leaving a permanent mark in our demographic mix. And Mahatma thought of the industrial scale transatlantic slave trade, taking captured Africans across the waters in cramp ships. And the modern state of Brazil emerged from that continent of the civilization of the Aztecs, the Mayas, and the Incas. And the spirit of Africa is alive in Brazilian culture, the warmth of its people, the music, and the samba that had its origins in Angola and Congo. And Russian history too contains connections. The great Russian writer Alexander Pushkin's great-grandfather was an African, Ibrahim Petrovich Ganibal, abducted from Cameroon, taken via Constantinople, and eventually taken to Russia, where he became a nobleman. During the struggle against apartheid, many South Africans stayed in Russia, in China, in India, and as with many other parts of the world, we received material assistance in the struggle for freedom in our land. And so we are connected by history, but not only by history. Today we look forward to matters relating to the future. Today's event is held in the industrial heartland of the African continent, an economy with major industrial strengths in traditional sectors, but also with technologies in the space and satellite economy, in the digital sector, in new green technologies, in advanced manufacturing. Ladies, gentlemen, friends, a major industrial exhibition is being held nearby at Gallagher Estate, showcasing products from more than 240 firms with 20 other African countries participating, together with the 5 BRICS partners. I urge those who have not been there, visit it. We held a manufacturing forum which provided a platform for discussion on green industrialization, on electric vehicle and battery production, playing to Africa's strengths in critical minerals. Excellencies, today the business community spent the full morning in deep discussion about investment, about trade, and about technical cooperation. It is my pleasure, therefore, to invite Mr. Sim Shabalala, the CEO of the Standard Bank Group of South Africa, to summarize the main outcomes and give his reflections. And I invite Sim to take the podium. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Minister, for that kind introduction. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a tremendous privilege to present this high-level feedback on the BRICS Business Forum 2023. Development a reality. The BRICS Business Forum has held sharply commercial and highly dynamic sessions attended by entrepreneurs, policymakers, business people, and indeed academics from across a number of the member countries and beyond. Talking of commercial dynamism, as the Minister has alluded, it is very fitting that the BRICS Business Forum has taken place right here in Sandton, here in Johannesburg, the capital of Gauteng. Gauteng generates about 35% of South Africa's GDP, and a large proportion of that is generated right here. and it is generated by South Africa's sophisticated and successful large corporations, medium-sized enterprises, and indeed SMEs. This year, for instance, Standard Bank's analysts think that South African listed equities will deliver average earnings per share growth of between 15 and 20%. To put it in perspective, other emerging markets are looking at -3% for the same period. And talking of South African corporations, relationships, travel, history, and trade, in the words of Minister Patel, I had the good fortune, ladies and gentlemen, and great honor of speaking this morning on a panel with Chairman Chin of the State Grid Corporation of China, as well as Mr. Ricardo Santon, President of the Brazilian Association of Animal Protein. They spoke about climate change and renewables. Words cannot describe the profundity of that moment. As it happens, it was a South African bank, my employer, the Standard Bank Group, which was the sole financial advisor to the State Grid Corporation of China in its 1.8 billion rand acquisition of 100% ownership of 7 power transmission companies in Brazil in 2010. I mention this admittedly because it illustrates that South African corporate expertise and connections are an important part of making BRICS into an ongoing commercial reality. South Africa certainly has its fair share of challenges, and I would rate unemployment and inequality as the deepest and worst of these. The wealth of Sandton is within easy walking distance of the deep poverty of Alexander, a painful contrast that can be found in all of the BRICS countries, but one that is also highly conducive to innovation in the service of inclusion. For instance, to South African ears, the Brazilian financial services innovations that we heard about today sounded all too familiar. So there are serious challenges here in South Africa, but we also have immense strengths and competitive advantages. As well as the corporations that I've mentioned, these strengths include our strong rule of law, which guarantees that contracts will be observed and that commercial disputes will be settled fairly. They include our freely floating currency, open capital account, extremely skillful and credible central bank, and deep and liquid capital markets. These guarantee that returns on investment are and will remain quickly accessible in the currency of the investor's choice. More competitive advantages arise from what a Chinese panelist called South Africa's celebrity products, Mr. President, which include rooibos tea, wine, and unique tourist experiences. This brings us to another of South Africa's strengths, which is South Africa's openness for the business and tourist traveler. People from all of our major trading partners enter South Africa either visa-free or with an e-visa. Further, liberalization of travel and greater encouragement of air links between the BRICS countries and our major trading partners is certainly warranted. Perhaps above all, South Africa's competitive advantage emerges from our well-developed trade and investment network with our fellow Africans. China is indeed Africa's largest trading partner. What is sometimes missed, however, is that South Africa is the second largest exporter to the rest of our beloved continent and its fourth largest import partner. Of course, investors from the BRICS and worldwide do very much want to buy into Africa, given our continent's uniquely favorable demographics, immense natural resources, potential for low-cost industrialization, and increasing market integration under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. For all these reasons, according to the IMF forecasts and on current trends, it is likely that sub-Saharan Africa will be the fastest growing region of the world by 2030. Standard Bank's analysts foresee that intra-Africa trade could double under the AFCFTA and that there would be a $3.4 trillion investment opportunity in Africa infrastructure emerging from this rapid growth. The bottom line is simple. If investors from BRICS and worldwide want to buy into Africa's enormous growth potential, the place to start is right here, in the square mile of Sandton. Today's discussions have examined current intra-BRICS trade and investment trends and explored tangible solutions to unlocking further trade and investment opportunities in the BRICS nations and worldwide. Given that the BRICS nations are agricultural powerhouses, agricultural production and trade were discussed in detail, with many useful comparisons, contrasts, and cross-learnings emerging. Participants were firmly of the view that much room exists for improvement across the BRICS nations regarding agricultural trade and market access. The same is true of Africa in general. Given the investments and the right policy environment, Africa can become the breadbasket of the world during this century, what Mr. Motsepe called the African century. Another important topic was the just transition. A participant argued, a just transition refers to shifting towards a sustainable and inclusive economy characterized by both social equity and environmental sustainability. Renewable energy is an enormous opportunity for public sector collaboration and private sector investment and trade right across the BRICS and beyond. The theme of entrepreneurship featured strongly. A vibrant SME sector is often the most efficient way to create jobs. And some SMEs become unicorns and even mighty multinationals such as BYD and Tencent of China. Of course, for this to happen, countries need favorable business environments, strong education systems, and the appropriate financing institutions. Participants further argued that opening up market access to entrepreneurs across all BRICS presents an exciting opportunity to foster trade and job creation. And this again highlights the value of strong travel links and appropriate visa regimes. Within the general theme of entrepreneurship, there was much discussion of the role of fintechs, an area in which BRICS countries have already established a great deal of expertise and success. On finance for SMEs, participants pointed out correctly that startups are particularly vulnerable to sudden and sharp increases in interest rates. One of the roles for DFIs, therefore, is to provide concessional and patient capital for promising SMEs. Two essential preconditions for a financial system that is able to support both micro-enterprises and lower-income households are the democratization of data and universal access to a stable and credible form of identification. India has led the developing world on both access to data and ID, as has Brazil.